keep it trucking. I got to ask you, I don't know how often you listen to former players and sit there and get real engaged and go, that guy's got a point, man. That guy has got a great point. I don't know how many times you've heard the conversation of Mike Tomlin leaving the Pittsburgh Steelers, or the Steelers needing to move on, or Mike Tomlin being the guy that should leave Pittsburgh because he wants out of Pittsburgh. I still remember my first year on the beat. Somebody from Washington flew up to Pittsburgh, which is insane, and sat in a Mike Tomlin Tuesday press conference until the very last question and said, Mike, any response on the rumors of you being traded to the Washington Commanders? Or at the time, it was the Washington football team. And Mike just said, no, and left. And I looked at the guy and said, you just spent a flight ticket to get here, pal. Whether it was you or your company or somebody is paying for a hotel room tonight for you to write no in a story. I could have just guessed that. You could have texted somebody and said, ask this question. It's totally fine. We hear it all the time.
Flew to Pittsburgh.
It's flew to Pittsburgh.
Can't get over
sat
that.
Right in front of me. And unless he drove, which would have been even crazier, but he sat right in front of me. And the whole time I kept thinking, you psychopath, you psychopath. What are you doing? Well, Ryan Clark had his thoughts on this. And maybe sometimes you listen to a former Super Bowl champion when you're talking about his head coach. I have no idea. I don't. But he said this on ESPN talking about the Steelers' schedule, which is, of all things, such a wild debate to bring this up in. He said, quote, I believe Mike Tomlin should coach in another organization. Mike Tomlin should be the fresh voice somewhere else. I believe as great as a head coach as he is, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer. I believe his voice has run stale there. I believe he's allowed that team to reach the highest of heights they are going to reach unless they get a top tier quarterback. Here's my thoughts on that real fast, and then I'll ask you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anybody who's sitting around saying Mike Tomlin is going to do a better job without a top-tier quarterback than with a top-tier quarterback. And if you are sitting around saying these things, you're wrong. You're blatantly wrong. And you know you're wrong. In your heart of hearts, you know you're wrong. I just don't get the argument of this is as good as the Steelers are going to get playoff team without a Super Bowl caliber quarterback, which is what you need in the NFL to win a Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
But Ryan Clark thinks that, well, because they don't have one right now, Tomlin's got to get out of there. And don't get me wrong, Tomlin would have a job in a minute, and there are a lot of people that would love for Mike Tomlin to leave. I get it. I hear it. I understand it. He's not going anywhere. And when it comes to the quarterback argument, I just don't understand how no one is. I take that back. How Ryan Clark is not viewing this, saying, all right, the clock is starting to tick, but the timer doesn't start until the next quarterback's in play. And until then, there's really nothing to talk about. Right?
Yes, I am glad you said it, because I do not understand the argument either of how can the coach have exhausted all of his options, reached the end of his rope in this specific role, but then immediately give the reason in the next clause of the same sentence as to what would make the coaching performance better, and it is an independent factor of the coach. And criticisms of Tomlin's game management, certain aspects of the things within, game management is the first one that comes to mind, but like certain things that you want to criticize him for week to week, sure. I'm not sure how he is a worse coach for not having a franchise quarterback there. I'm missing something. I really do respect Ryan Clark. I do enjoy listening to him as an analyst of the game post football, but I feel like I'm totally missing something here as to why that makes sense for Ryan Clark. I don't get it. I don't get it at all.
I agree. What is the argument here? That if you don't get a franchise quarterback, you can't win a Super Bowl? No Really?
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Who would have thought that in
Yeah.
today's day and age, when Jalen Hurts and Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson are running around throwing footballs all over the place, that you as a franchise also need one of those to succeed? The point being and stuff like, go ahead. You got thoughts?
Yeah, well, the other thing that feels relevant is like the calling his messaging and his communication, whatever, stale. And my question I immediately have in my notes here is, to who? Like, to the fans of the Steelers? Sure, I imagine there is some staleness there and it feels like complacency, but I am struggling to, in this moment, or even like thinking about it before we were on here, like, how many players who don't have like certain specific needs, whether it's financial or character driven, flaws, let's call them. There's not a lot of players who sit there and say like, it was just the way that Tomlin was communicating with me and the way that he motivated us that just really, I tuned him out by week 6. Like, I think that's like the staleness and like the messaging not being heard in the locker room, I think is a blown out of proportion criticism of Tomlin that happens from outside of the locker room. Cause I don't really see that from what comes out of the locker room, at least from like the core members of the team, and they're the ones who've been here the longest. So
I've never in a million years heard. I have 6 years, 6 seasons of being in that locker room. I have never had one person tell me, yeah, dude, Mike T, man, just didn't get me fired. I've heard that Mike Tomlin on like a Tuesday has people ready to run through a wall. You know what I mean? If I had $1 for every time somebody told me if Mike Tomlin's speeches could just get out there, like he would motivate every single person, I'd have at least a couple of bucks, like it's ridiculous how many people are hyped. Like the players love him, man. That's what it comes
if anyone's like been to like, like St. Vincent's for training camp, like, and you just like kind of like you're in the bleachers, you can hear him pumping up the players. You can hear him like going through, and you can see like these players going through and just sort of like getting pumped up by a coach in a way that, I'm not familiar with all other 31 franchises in the NFL, but it doesn't seem like this is a uniform thing that head coaches are able to get out of their players. Again, I criticize the system, his form, decision making, certain things, but like I think it is really unfounded to say that he does not, like, his message is getting stale with the locker room.
It is the furthest thing from stale. But shout out Ryan Clark, man. Shout out Ryan Clark. All right. Had to toss that one out there as we closed off today. That's everything.